Adam Rivers sat in his huge office on the 40th floor of a skyscraper, watching the sunset bathe the city in golden light. His gaze was focused, but cold, like everything else that concerned his life. He had long since grown accustomed to solitude. His work, his business, that was what mattered. Personal connections had always seemed like something unnecessary, a distraction from his goals. But today was different. He had just finished talking to his sister, and her words were still ringing in his head. "Adam, it's only a few days. I want you there. This is my wedding, not another deal." Emily always knew how to pressure him. She was the only person for whom he would compromise his principles. But her request to come with a girl stumped him. He rose from the table, went to the bar, and poured himself a glass of whiskey. Thinking about how to avoid family ridicule and endless questions did not bring relief. Adam wasn't about to let anyone into his life, even for show. An idea flashed through his mind. Something practical, businesslike, and completely emotionless. He needed a companion who would play her part and disappear immediately after the wedding. He didn't see anything complicated in that. The next day, while working from home, he found an escort profile. His choice fell on Carol Brooks. Her photo and short description piqued his interest, not just beautiful, but smart and confident. This was the kind of woman who could handle his demanding family. Carol, at that time in a small coffee shop, leafed through her diary with her schedule. She was used to different clients, but the request from Adam Rivers intrigued her. His reputation as a ruthless businessman was known even to her. A week. A regular job. Just an escort, Carol reassured herself, but a premonition told her that everything would not be so simple. When Adam invited her to dinner to discuss the details, she immediately felt his strength and coldness. "I'm not looking for anything personal," he began as the waiter walked away from their table. "This is simply an agreement. You are accompanying me to my sister's wedding, and I am paying for your services." "I see," Carol raised an eyebrow, meeting his gaze. "But you do realize how the family will feel if there is no chemistry between us? You mean we have to pretend?" "Exactly," her smile was light, almost mocking. "Otherwise, your sister will see through it right away." This woman surprised him. She spoke directly, without fear of his reputation. It was a little annoying, but at the same time, fascinating. "Then it's a deal," he concluded, raising his glass. Carol tilted her head and raised her glass to his. A spark flickered between them at that moment, but both decided not to attach any importance to it. That evening, neither of them knew that their agreement would be the beginning of a completely new chapter in their lives. Early Friday morning, Adam and Carol met at the airport to fly to his sister's wedding. Adam was as collected as always, dressed with perfect precision, a dark suit, an expensive watch, a stern look. Carol, on the contrary, chose a light but elegant dress that emphasized her grace, but did not shout about her status. "You look not bad," Adam said dryly when she approached. "Thank you," Carol grinned. "And you, as always, are icy and unattainable." "Better this way than to be too emotional," he replied, pretending not to notice her taunt. Their flight passed in silence. Carol noticed that Adam, despite his aloofness, seemed tense. She decided to break the silence. "Are you always this nervous when you go to see your family?" "I'm not nervous," he said, but his eyes said otherwise. "I just don't like to show them weakness." "Their family. Isn't that what they're there for, to see the real you?" Adam was silent, lost in his thoughts. When Carol arrived, she was struck by the size of the Rivers estate. The huge mansion, surrounded by neatly trimmed gardens, looked like it came straight from the cover of a magazine. The family greeted them warmly, but cautiously. "Adam, I thought you'd never bring anyone with you," Emily said, hugging her brother. "Well, here's a surprise," he said shortly, glancing at Carol. "This is Carol." "Nice to meet you," she said with a smile, holding out her hand. Emily took in Carol immediately. She looked confident, but there was something more to her eyes than just the image of the perfect girl. We've all been waiting for this moment, Adam's mother, Mrs. Rivers, added, nodding toward the new couple. I hope you finally found what you're looking for, Adam. Adam didn't answer, merely nodded slightly. That evening, when the family gathered for dinner, Carol felt herself the object of intense attention. They asked questions about how they met, what she did, and each of her answers was received with obvious interest. So you're an artist? One of the aunts asked. Yes, but it's more of a hobby for now, Carol answered modestly. I'm planning to open my own gallery when I find the right opportunity. Very ambitious, Adam's father, Mr. Rivers, noted with obvious approval. Ambition is important. Adam watched this exchange with some surprise. Carol had won his family's favor so easily that he began to wonder if she was overdoing it. When dinner was over, they were alone in the guest room. You're doing great, Adam said, folding his arms over his chest. Thank you, she replied, taking off her shoes. Although your family is a difficult audience, they like to delve into other people's lives too much, he said, coldly. Maybe because they want to get to know you better? Carol asked quietly, and her words struck a chord with him. Adam turned away, not wanting to continue the conversation. Let's just focus on our game, he said, leaving her in the room. Carol watched him go, feeling that behind his flawless mask there was a man she didn't yet understand, but wanted to get to know better. The next day, the family bustle began early in the morning. Preparations for the wedding were in full swing, decorations, flowers, endless phone calls. Everyone looked busy and happy, except Adam. He kept to himself, checking his phone occasionally and trying to communicate with his relatives as little as possible. Carol, on the other hand, fit in easily. She helped Emily choose the decor, talked to the aunts, and even played an impromptu game of hide-and-seek with the nephews. Adam watched her from afar, not understanding how she managed to find a common language with his family so naturally. You're watching me again, Carol noted, approaching him with a cup of coffee. I'm simply amazed at how quickly you gained their trust, he replied, accepting the cup. Maybe because I'm not trying to be someone else, she said with a slight smile. You can try, too. Adam only chuckled. They're used to seeing me as I am. No, they're used to seeing who you show, Carol corrected him. Those are different things. By evening, the tension between them began to subside. The family had a small dinner on the terrace, and Carol found herself enjoying it more and more. These people were loud, laughing, but sincere, something she had missed for so long. During dinner, Mrs. Rivers turned to Carol. Carol, you are holding yourself up beautifully. Adam usually keeps everyone at a distance, but with you, he is completely different. Carol felt Adam tense up next to her, but she only smiled softly. I think he just needs a little time to open up. These words made him think. Later in the evening, Adam and Carol found themselves alone in the garden. A light cold wind played with her hair, and the soft light of the garlands created an almost fairy tale atmosphere. Do you really think I am hiding behind a mask? He asked unexpectedly, looking at her. Carol looked into his eyes and nodded. Yes. You are afraid that someone will see what you can really be. And if I'm not who I want to seem? Then you're still worthy of being yourself, she answered quietly. Their eyes met, and a silence arose between them, which was filled with something unspoken. Thank you for doing this for me, Adam said, for the first time all evening allowing himself to be sincere. You're welcome, Carol answered, feeling something inside her change. When they returned to the house, Carol realized that their agreement was starting to go beyond a simple business deal. She felt herself becoming more and more attracted to this man hiding behind the walls. But she knew that any feelings for Adam would be a difficult test for her. Adam, lying in his room, tried to understand why Carol had touched him so deeply. Her words echoed in his head, making him think about himself and what he wanted from life. This evening became a turning point for both of them. The next day was devoted to the wedding rehearsal and dinner for the closest relatives. All members of the family were busy preparing, and Adam and Carol continued to play their role as the perfect couple. But the tension between them became more palpable, as if the emotions they were trying to hide could no longer be contained. In the morning, while the others were busy with their chores, Adam took Carol to the stables. "I think you should see one of the few things I really love about this place," he said, leading her through the spacious paddocks. Carol was surprised to see his stern gaze soften as they approached the horse. "This is Marble," Adam introduced, patting the snow-white stallion. "We understand each other without words." Carol laughed. "So you can be real after all." "Maybe you're right," he said, not taking his eyes off the horse. "But only in these rare moments." She reached out to stroke Marble, and as her fingers touched the soft mane, Adam suddenly realized how well this setting suited her. Her lightness and warmth contrasted with his coldness, and he began to feel that her presence made him a better person. The rehearsal began in the evening. Carol smiled charmingly at the guests, participating in the discussion of details, as if she really were part of this family. Adam, watching her, found himself wishing for the first time in a long time that he could stay here, in this moment, with her. During dinner, Emily, Adam's sister, raised her glass. "I want to thank everyone for being here. And especially my brother for bringing such a wonderful girl with him." Everyone looked at Adam and Carol, and Mrs. Rivers added, "Yes, we haven't seen him this happy in a long time. Carol, you bring light into his life." Carol felt her cheeks flush. She glanced at Adam, and their eyes met. She saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before: gratitude and warmth. After dinner, Adam invited Carol to walk in the garden. The air was cool, but the light snow added magic to the evening. They walked in silence until Adam suddenly stopped. "You know," he began, "I brought you here to avoid unnecessary questions and pressure. But I didn't expect things to get out of hand." "What do you mean?" she asked, feeling her heart beat faster. "I thought I could keep my distance. That it would just be a game," he continued, looking at her. "But you're changing me." Carol didn't know what to say. Her own feelings were so tangled that she was afraid to take a step forward. "Adam," she began, but he cut her off. "You don't have to say anything," he said quietly, moving closer to her. "I just want to know if you feel the same way." Their faces were so close that Carol could feel his breath. She closed her eyes, and the next moment their lips met. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a flash that made them both realize that their connection was much deeper than they had imagined. Back at the house, they both tried to act like before, but inside, everything had changed. Now they were on the brink of something new, and each of them knew that this feeling was impossible to ignore. The next morning, the house was filled with festive bustle. Guests were arriving, final preparations were being made, and everyone was in a joyful and upbeat mood. But Carol and Adam felt the tension that had been lingering since the night before. Their kiss had left a mark that could not be erased. Carol tried to stay away from Adam, afraid that their closeness yesterday could destroy not only their agreement but also her confidence. She felt that she was starting to lose control of the situation, and this scared her. Adam, on the contrary, seemed determined. He avoided business calls and even gave up his usual secluded places to be closer to her. "Carol, can you help me with the guests?" he suddenly asked, catching her eye in the hall. "Of course," she answered, trying to hide her embarrassment. An hour later, they found themselves alone in the kitchen. Carol was washing dishes, and Adam was watching her from the table. "You're avoiding me," he said, not hiding his disappointment. Carol sighed, without turning around. "Adam, we did something we shouldn't have. It complicates things." "Complicates things?" he asked, standing up and coming closer. "Or does it force us to face reality?" She turned and looked at him, feeling her heart clench at his directness. "We started this as a game, remember? I don't want you to think I'm using you or anything." "What if I want it to be something other than a game?" he asked, looking into her eyes. "Carol, do you think I bring someone into my life that easily? I hate all this family stuff, but I feel different with you." "Adam," she whispered, feeling her inner walls begin to crumble. Just tell me one thing, do you feel anything for me? His voice was serious, but there was hope in it. She hesitated, but then quietly answered. Yes, I do. Their conversation was interrupted by Emily's appearance, who looked worried. Adam, we're having a minor crisis. Can you help? Adam left immediately with his sister, but Carol remained standing, wondering how her life could change so much in just a few days. She later learned that the crisis concerned a relative who had tried to disturb the peace of the wedding day with his thoughtless words. Adam, on the other hand, showed an unexpected side of himself, taking control of the situation with surprising gentleness and tact. Carol watched him from the sidelines and felt her admiration for this man only grow. That evening, when all the guests had left and the house was quiet, Carol and Adam met again in the garden. Tomorrow is the wedding, she said, looking at the falling snow. Tomorrow may be different, he answered, coming closer. And if I run away again, she asked, her voice full of doubt. Adam took her hand. Then I will follow you. His words sounded so sincere that Carol felt a warmth blooming in her soul. I'm afraid, Adam, she admitted. We're both afraid, he said. But that doesn't mean we should give up what we have. Their eyes met again, and for the first time in a long time, she realized that she wanted to take a risk. The wedding day arrived. The mansion was decorated in soft colors, garlands twinkled everywhere, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and winter flowers. Carol wore the elegant dress Emily had picked out for her bridesmaids. It fit perfectly, but Carol felt like she was wearing a costume for a role she couldn't quite pull off. She stood by the window of her room, looking out at the snow-covered garden. Her thoughts were in a whirlwind. What had started as a simple deal had turned into something she had been dreading, real feelings. The door quietly opened and Adam walked in. Are you ready? He asked, but his expression showed that something more was on his mind. Carol turned to him, feeling her heart skip a beat. I'm not sure. Are you? Adam took a step closer, his eyes serious. I was ready for this deal. But I wasn't ready for you, he said, looking deep into her eyes. You've turned my world upside down, Carol. I don't want it to end. She smiled weakly, but her eyes were filled with tears. Adam, you know we're from different worlds. You have everything, a career, wealth, family. I have nothing. He shook his head and took her hands. You have yourself. And that's more than you think. You're strong, honest, and you're the only one who made me think about what I really want. And what do you want? She whispered, her voice shaking. Adam came even closer, his arms wrapped around her shoulders. I want you. Not for a couple of days. Not as part of a deal. But forever. Carol couldn't hold back her tears. She felt all the tension of the last few days disappear, leaving only warmth and joy. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, he smiled. But maybe it's worth the risk? After the wedding ceremony, where they both played their parts, Adam publicly announced to the family that he planned to stay in their lives not for the sake of the business, but for himself. He also introduced Carol not as a temporary companion, but as the woman he wanted to see by his side. The family met the news in different ways. Emily looked happy, and Adam's mother was slightly stunned. But it didn't stop anyone. Later in the evening, in the garden, Adam and Carol stood under the stars, embracing. I won't let you go again, he said quietly. And if I want to? She joked, but her smile betrayed that she was not serious. Then I'll come after you, he answered, touching her lips with his. Their kiss was a promise, no more deals, no more games. Only the love they found in each other, despite all the obstacles. The snow fell, hiding all traces except those they left together, starting a new path that they decided to walk together.